He begged for milk for his child at her door, blood on his hands and desperation in his voice. The Black Widow fed the baby herself, cradling the dying infant against her chest as the sun crested over Salvation Ridge. Jeremiah Kane had never begged for anything, not when his father's belt left welts, not when hunger gnawed at him for days, not when bullets whistled past his ears in a dozen gunfights. But watching his newborn daughter fade in his arms broke something in him that couldn't be mended with whiskey or violence. Eva Thornfield opened her door to find the territory's most wanted outlaw swaying on her porch. The baby's cries cut through the morning air, sharp as winter wind. She took one look at the starving child and pulled them both inside without a word. The townspeople watched from their windows. Mrs. Patterson clutched her shawl tighter. Old Tom spat into the dust and shook his head. They'd seen the Black Widow take in strays before. Men who needed healing. Men who needed hiding. Men who never left her house alive, according to the whispers. Eva settled into her rocking chair and opened her dress. The baby latched immediately, tiny fists unclenching as warm milk filled her belly. Kane collapsed against the wall, watching this stranger save his child's life with her own body. "She got a name?" Eva's voice carried the weight of distant thunder. "Hope." "Hope." Eva tested the word, found it fitting. "When did you last eat?" Kane couldn't remember. Time had blurred since Sarah died birthing their daughter. 3 days of riding hard, begging at farmhouses, watching hope grow weaker with each mile. The good Christian folk took one look at his face and slammed their doors. Eva read his silence. She shifted hope to one arm and ladled soup into a bowl with the other. Kane ate without tasting, his eyes never leaving his daughter. Color was returning to Hope's face. Her breathing steadied. "You're bleeding." Eva nodded toward the red stain spreading across Kane's shoulder. "Doesn't matter." "It will when you pass out and can't care for her." Kane set down the empty bowl. "I can't pay you." "Didn't ask you to." Something in her tone made him study her face. High cheekbones carved by wind and worry. Eyes that had seen too much. Hands that moved with practiced gentleness despite the calluses. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe 35. The stories painted her as ancient as the hills. "Why?" he asked. Eva looked down at Hope, now sleeping peacefully. "Because she's innocent." The baby's tiny fingers wrapped around Ava's thumb. Kane felt his throat tighten. Sarah should be here. Sarah should be the one feeding their daughter, rocking her to sleep, planning her future. Instead, a stranger was giving Hope what he couldn't provide. "Sheriff will come looking," Kane said. "Sheriff's been looking for reasons to run me out of town for years. Ain't succeeded yet." She stood and handed Hope back to him. The baby stirred but didn't wake. Kane's rough hands looked enormous against his daughter's delicate form. He'd killed men with these hands. Now they trembled holding the most precious thing in his world. "You can't stay up here," Eva said. "Got a cellar. It's cool and dry." Kane followed her to a hidden door behind the kitchen. Stone steps led down to a small room lined with shelves of preserved foods and herb bundles. A cot sat in the corner, clean blankets folded at its foot. "Someone else use this place?" Kane asked. "From time to time." He didn't ask who. Men in his situation didn't ask questions that might reveal answers they couldn't live with. Eva brought down water and bandages. Kane let her clean his wound while Hope slept against his chest. The bullet had passed through his shoulder, missing bone and major vessels. Lucky. "Infection's what'll kill you now," Eva said, pressing a poultice against the wound. The herbs smelled like spring rain and something sharper. "This'll draw out the poison." "What's in it?" "Best you don't know." Kane had heard the stories. Eva Thornfield, the Black Widow who'd buried 3 husbands under mysterious circumstances. The woman who knew which plants healed and which ones killed. The midwife who could birth a baby or end a pregnancy with equal skill. Looking at her now, he saw only the woman who'd saved his daughter without question or payment. The woman who'd given Hope her own milk, when the world had turned its back on them both. "How long can we stay?" Kane asked. Long as it takes. Eva climbed the stairs, leaving father and daughter alone in the cool darkness. Cain lay on the cot with Hope on his chest, listening to her steady breathing. Above them, Eva's footsteps moved across the floor, cleaning up evidence of their arrival. The cellar door opened. Eva descended with a basket of supplies, milk bottles, clean rags, a small wooden rattle. She'd prepared for a baby's needs with the efficiency of someone who understood what children required. "You got young ones?" Cain asked. Eva's hand stilled on the bottles. "Not anymore." The words hung between them heavy as storm clouds. Cain didn't press. Everyone in this territory carried losses too deep for casual conversation. Footsteps on the porch above made them both freeze. Heavy boots, spurs jangling. A man's voice calling Eva's name. She pressed a finger to her lips and climbed the ladder. Cain held Hope closer, his free hand moving to his gun. The baby stirred but didn't cry, as if she sensed the danger. "Sheriff Cross," Eva's voice carried down through the floorboards. "What brings you by so early?" "Heard gunshots this morning, saw a rider heading this way." "Didn't see any rider. Mind if I look around?" "You got a warrant?" A pause. "Just being neighborly, Eva." "Appreciate the concern, but I'm fine. Got a birth to attend later. Need to prepare my supplies." Cain listened to their careful dance of words. Eva's voice never wavered, never rushed. She spoke with the calm authority of someone accustomed to handling dangerous men. "Lot of strangers passing through lately," the sheriff said. "Folks are nervous." "Folks are always nervous about something. This one's different. Jeremiah Cain's been spotted in the territory. A man like that, he'd bring trouble to anyone fool enough to help him." "Good thing I'm not fool enough for anything." The sheriff's boots moved across the porch. Cain could picture him studying Eva's face, looking for tells, finding none. "You take care of yourself, Eva. World's getting more dangerous for women living alone." "I'll keep that in mind." The boots retreated. Hoofbeats faded into the distance. Eva waited several minutes before opening the cellar door. "He's gone," she said, "but he'll be back." Cain emerged from the cellar, Hope still sleeping in his arms. "I should go. Bring trouble down on you." "Where would you go?" He had no answer. Every contact from his old life wanted him dead or captured. Every honest person would turn him in for the reward. Eva was the only person in 500 miles who'd shown him kindness. "Besides," Eva said, taking Hope from him, "she needs to eat every few hours. You can't provide what she needs." She was right. Cain watched Eva settle into the rocking chair again, watched his daughter latch onto this stranger who was becoming more essential with each passing hour. The sight stirred something in him he hadn't felt since Sarah died. Not just gratitude, but a fierce protectiveness that extended beyond hope to encompass the woman keeping them both alive. Outside, the sun climbed higher. Inside, Eva rocked his daughter and hummed a lullaby Cain didn't recognize. The melody wrapped around them like a blessing, promising safety in a world that offered none. For the first time in 3 days, Cain allowed himself to hope. 3 weeks passed in careful rhythms. Cain's shoulder healed in stages, the angry red wound fading to pink, then white. Eva changed his bandages without comment, her fingers clinical yet gentle. Hope thrived in the routine of feeding, sleeping, and waking to find herself loved. Cain learned the language of fatherhood, the different cries that meant hunger, discomfort, or simple loneliness, how to test milk temperature on his wrist, the precise angle to hold Hope so she wouldn't spit up on his shirt. Eva taught him with the patience of someone who understood that broken men needed time to become whole. "She's getting heavy," Cain said one morning, cradling Hope after her feeding. "Growing babies do that." Eva wiped her hands on her apron, watching Cain count Hope's tiny fingers for the 12th time. The sight of this dangerous man reduced to wonder by his daughter's existence stirred something in Eva's chest she'd thought long buried. The cellar had become Cain's world. Eva brought him books from her small collection, medical texts, poetry, a worn Bible with Sarah's name inscribed in fading ink. He read to Hope in the evenings, his rough voice softening the sharp edges of words. Above ground, Eva tended her garden, tomatoes and beans for sustenance, medicinal herbs that grew in careful rows, chamomile for sleep, willow bark for pain, plants whose names she didn't share, whose purposes remained her secrets. Sheriff Cross rode by twice more. Each time, Eva met him on the porch with steady eyes and careful words. Each time, he left unsatisfied but unable to find cause for search or seizure. "Man's getting suspicious," Kane said after the sheriff's second visit. "Man's been suspicious since the day I arrived in this town." Eva didn't elaborate. Kane didn't ask. They'd developed an understanding built on necessary silences. The town watched Eva with renewed interest. Her sudden possession of a baby raised questions no one dared ask directly. Mrs. Patterson whispered to her sewing circle about mysterious fathers and midnight births. Old Tom shook his head and muttered about the wages of sin. Only Martha Hendricks knocked on Eva's door with genuine concern. The elderly shopkeeper had befriended Eva when no one else would, drawn by loneliness and a widow's understanding of solitude. "Whose child is she really?" Martha asked one afternoon, studying Hope's sleeping face. "Mine now," Eva replied. Martha's eyes held questions her mouth wouldn't voice. She'd lived long enough to recognize the careful distance people maintained around truths too dangerous for daylight. "Town's talking," Martha said instead. "Town always talks. This is different. Sheriff's been asking questions about your past. About your husband's." Eva's hands stilled on the herbs she was sorting. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that lead to rope and trees." That evening, Eva descended to the cellar with unusual urgency. Kane looked up from the book he was reading, noting the tension in her shoulders. "We might have a problem," she said. Kane closed the book. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that gets people hanged." She told him about Martha's warning, about the sheriff's renewed interest in her past, about the way suspicion spread through small towns faster than wildfire. "Maybe it's time I moved on," Kane said. "Where would you go with a baby?" The question hung between them. Kane had no answer that didn't end with Hope's death or capture. His old contacts were either dead or hunting him. His reputation made legitimate work impossible. "Besides," Eva continued, "she needs stability, routine, a place to call home." Home. The word tasted foreign in Kane's mouth. He'd never had a place that felt permanent, never stayed anywhere long enough to call it more than temporary shelter. But watching Eva rock Hope to sleep each night, listening to her hum lullabies in the lamplight, he began to understand what home might mean. Days blended into routine. Kane helped where he could, grinding herbs and organizing Eva's medical supplies. His hands, trained for destruction, learned the delicate work of measuring dosages and preparing remedies. "You're good at this," Eva observed, watching him bundle dried chamomile. "Never thought I'd be suited for healing." "Healing's just another kind of fighting. Fighting against pain, against sickness, against death." Kane considered this. He'd spent his life fighting for money, for reputation, for survival. Fighting to save lives felt like a purpose worth the risk. Hope grew stronger daily. Her cries grew louder, more demanding. Her grip tightened around fingers placed in her palm. She began to track movement with her eyes, following Eva's face as she moved around the room. "She knows you," Kane said one evening. "Babies know who feeds them." But it was more than hunger driving Hope's preference for Eva's arms. The child settled faster for Eva's voice, slept deeper against Eva's chest. She was bonding with the woman who'd become her mother in all but blood. Kane watched this relationship deepen with gratitude and growing unease. Hope needed Eva more than she needed him. What claim did he have on either of them beyond the accident of fatherhood? "Tell me about your husbands," he said one night. Eva's rocking chair stopped moving. Hope stirred in her arms but didn't wake. "What do you want to know?" "The truth." Eva studied his face in the lamplight. Whatever she saw there convinced her to speak. "They're not dead." The words fell like stones into still water. Kane waited for the ripples to settle. First one was Thomas. Owed money to dangerous men. I helped him disappear, staged his death, let him start fresh in California. He promised to send for me when he got established. Eva's voice carried no bitterness, only resignation. Second was Marcus. Accused of a crime he didn't commit. Mob was coming for him. I gave him a new name, a new grave, a chance to run. He promised to write. And the third? James. Eva's voice softened. He was different, gentle, kind. But his family hated him for marrying a woman with my reputation. They threatened to disown him, ruin his business. He asked me to help him fake his death so we could start over somewhere else together. But he never came back. None of them did. Cain absorbed this revelation. The Black Widow wasn't a killer, but a guardian angel with a talent for theatrical death. She'd sacrificed her reputation to save desperate men who'd repaid her kindness with abandonment. Why tell me this? Because you asked for truth. Because you're not running away. The distinction mattered. Cain had stayed not from lack of options, but from choice. He'd chosen Eva and Hope over freedom, safety, and the familiar dangers of his old life. There's more, Eva said, about why I can feed Hope. Cain waited. I was pregnant. 4 months along when James left. Lost the baby a week later. Eva's voice remained steady, but her hands trembled slightly. Body didn't know the difference, still thought it needed to provide. The loss explained Eva's fierce protectiveness toward Hope, her natural skill with infant care, the sadness that shadowed her eyes during quiet moments. She'd saved Hope's life with milk, meant for her own child. I'm sorry, Cain said. Don't be. That baby brought you to my door, brought Hope to my arms. Maybe that's what she was meant to do. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Inside, Hope slept peacefully between two people learning to love again, despite every reason not to trust in anything permanent. The next morning brought new dangers. Martha arrived at dawn, her face pale with worry. Sheriff's got letters, she said without preamble, from your dead husbands, all of them alive and well and living under new names. Eva's coffee cup rattled against its saucer. How? Been investigating for weeks. Sent telegrams to Marshall's offices in 3 territories. Got responses yesterday. Martha's voice dropped to a whisper. He's planning to arrest you for fraud. Maybe worse. Cain emerged from the cellar at Eva's signal. Hope fussed in his arms, sensing the adult's tension. How long do we have? He asked. Hours, maybe less. Eva moved with sudden purpose, gathering supplies and stuffing them into a traveling bag. Cain watched her efficient preparations with growing dread. We can't run with a baby, he said. We can't stay and hang either. But even as she packed, Eva's movements slowed. She looked around the kitchen that had become their sanctuary, at the garden visible through the window, at Hope's makeshift cradle by the fireplace. This is my home, she said quietly. Not worth dying for. Maybe it is. Eva stopped packing. She sat down heavily, suddenly looking every one of her years. I'm tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of being afraid. She looked at Cain holding Hope. Some things are worth fighting for. Cain understood. He'd spent his life running from consequences, from connections, from anything that might anchor him to one place long enough to matter. But this kitchen, this woman, this child, they mattered more than safety. Then we make our stand here, he said. Eva smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. We? We! The word bound them together stronger than marriage vows or blood oaths. They were a family now, forged by necessity and choice in equal measure. Hope began to cry, demanding attention from a world that had grown complicated around her. Eva took her from Cain's arms and settled into the rocking chair one more time. Outside, dust clouds marked approaching riders. The reckoning was coming. But inside, Eva fed Hope with steady hands while Cain checked his weapons. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The chair rocked in ancient rhythm. The baby fed. The man watched. And for this moment, they were home. Sheriff Cross arrived with the letters in his saddlebags and righteousness in his bearing. The dust from his horse's hooves hadn't settled when he knocked on Eva's door with the heavy authority of a man who believed he held all the cards. Eva opened the door, holding Hope against her shoulder. The baby had grown restless all morning, as if sensing the storm gathering around their small sanctuary. "Sheriff? Eva Thornfield, I'm placing you under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud." Cross stepped onto the porch without invitation. Behind him, 3 townsmen lingered near the gate. Not quite a mob, but close enough to smell like one. What fraud would that be? Cross pulled out the letters with theatrical flourish. "Your 3 dead husbands send their regards from California, Texas, and Colorado, respectively. Seems death ain't as permanent as folks around here thought." Eva's face remained stone. "Don't know what you're talking about." "Course you don't." Cross gestured to the men behind him. "Tom, you and the boys search the house. Look for evidence of other crimes." "You got a warrant for that?" "Got probable cause. That's enough." The men pushed past Eva into her kitchen. She stepped back, clutching Hope tighter. The baby began to fuss, picking up on the tension crackling through the air. From the cellar, Kane heard boots on the floorboards above. His hand moved to his gun, then stopped. Shooting lawmen would only make things worse for Eva and Hope. He forced himself to remain still, listening to the sounds of his sanctuary being violated. "Nice little setup you got here," Cross said, examining Eva's herb collection. "Lot of interesting plants. Some folks might call them suspicious. Some folks might call breathing suspicious if it suited their purposes." Cross's eyes narrowed. "You got a mouth on you, woman. Always have. But that mouth's about to get you in more trouble than you can handle." Old Tom emerged from the bedroom, shaking his head. "Nothing in there but women's things. Check the cellar." Eva's blood turned to ice. She shifted Hope to her other arm, buying time. "Cellar's just storage. Food and such." "Then you won't mind us looking?" The cellar door stood slightly ajar. Tom approached it with the caution of a man who'd heard too many stories about Eva's mysterious ways. His hand hesitated on the handle. "Go on," Cross urged. "Just a cellar, right, Eva?" Tom pulled the door open. The hinges creaked in the sudden silence. He peered down into the darkness, then lit a lantern and descended the stone steps. Kane pressed himself against the far wall, hidden behind hanging herbs and preserved meat. His breathing slowed to almost nothing. Hope's cries from upstairs covered any sound he might make. Tom's boots moved across the cellar floor. The lantern light swayed, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Kane could see the man's legs, could have reached out and touched them. "Well?" Cross called down. "Just food stores. Some medical supplies. Nothing suspicious." Tom's boots turned toward Kane's hiding spot. The light swung closer. Kane's hand found his knife handle, preparing for the worst. Hope's cries grew louder upstairs. Eva's voice carried down, singing a lullaby to calm the baby. The sound distracted Tom for a crucial moment. He turned back toward the stairs. "Nothing down here, Sheriff." Kane released a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Tom climbed back up, and the cellar door closed with a soft thud. "Disappointing," Cross said. "But I still got those letters. 3 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and whatever else I can make stick." "Those letters prove nothing." "They prove your husbands ain't dead. That's enough to start with." Eva looked around her kitchen, at the herbs hanging from the rafters, at the rocking chair where she'd fed Hope every day for 3 weeks. This was her sanctuary, her home, her life. Cross was trying to tear it all away based on acts of mercy she'd never regretted. "You want to know the truth?" Eva asked. "I'm listening." "Those men came to me desperate, broken, afraid. I helped them start over, gave them new chances at life. If that's a crime, then I'm guilty." Cross's smile was sharp as winter wind. Finally, some honesty. "But I'm not guilty of murder. I'm not guilty of greed. I'm guilty of caring too much about people who had nowhere else to turn." Pretty words. Won't save you from the rope. Hope's cries grew more insistent. Eva bounced her gently, but the baby wouldn't be comforted. She sensed the danger surrounding them, the anger and fear radiating from the men who'd invaded her home. "Let me feed her," Eva said. "Then we can continue this conversation." "Feed her here, in front of witnesses." Eva's jaw tightened. "That's not proper." "Nothing about this situation is proper. You got a baby with no known father, 3 supposedly dead husbands who ain't dead, and a reputation that curdles milk. Nothing proper about any of it." The cruel words hung in the air. Ava's friends had abandoned her. Her reputation had been destroyed by her own kindness. Now even her right to dignity was being stripped away. "The baby's hungry," Eva said simply. "Then feed her, unless you got something to hide." Eva looked around the room at the faces watching her. Tom's weathered features showed embarrassment. The other men studied their boots. Only Cross seemed to enjoy her humiliation. She settled into the rocking chair and opened her dress. Hope latched immediately, her cries stopping as milk flowed. Eva's face remained composed, but her eyes blazed with quiet fury. "Interesting," Cross said. "Woman produces milk without being married. Makes a man wonder." "Makes a man wonder if he's got any decency left." Martha's voice cut through the tension. Everyone turned. Martha Hendricks stood in the doorway, her gray hair pulled back severely, her eyes flashing with anger. "Martha," Cross said, "this is official business. This is harassment of a woman who's done more good in this town than the rest of us combined." Martha entered the kitchen with the authority of someone who'd lived long enough to stop caring about social conventions. She positioned herself between Ava and the men, a shield of respectability. "This woman delivered my grandson when no doctor would come. She sat with my dying husband when fever took him. She's healed more people in this town than anyone wants to admit." "She's also a fraud," Cross said. "Got proof right here." "Your proof shows she saved 3 men's lives. That makes her a hero, not a criminal." Cross's face flushed red. "You defending her criminal activities?" "I'm defending common decency. Something you seem to have forgotten." The confrontation crackled between them. Eva continued feeding Hope, drawing strength from Martha's unexpected support. But she could see the calculation in Cross's eyes, the way he was adding Martha's defense to his list of grievances. "You're mighty quick to defend her," Cross said. "Makes a man wonder what you might be hiding too." Martha stepped forward, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Are you threatening me, Sheriff?" "Just observing. You and Eva seem close, real close, maybe too close for comfort." The implication hung in the air. Martha's face went white, then red. In a town where reputation was everything, Cross had just fired a warning shot across her bow. "You've got a dirty mind, Sheriff," Martha said. But then, dirty minds see dirt everywhere they look. Hope finished feeding and dozed against Eva's chest. Eva stood slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. The baby's weight felt heavier now, as if absorbing the tension surrounding them. "I'll ask you one more time to leave my home," Eva said, "and I'll ask you one more time to come quietly." The standoff stretched taut. Eva could run, but where would she go with a baby? She could fight, but against what? Cross had the law on his side, twisted though his interpretation might be. The sound of approaching hoofbeats broke the silence. Everyone turned toward the window. 3 riders approached, their horses lathered with sweat and hard riding. Kane recognized the sound from the cellar. His blood turned to ice. He'd heard those particular horses before, knew the rhythm of their hoofbeats. His past had finally caught up with him. "Expecting company?" Cross asked Eva. "No." The riders drew closer. Kane could see them through the tiny cellar window. Iron Pete Morrison sat tall in his saddle, flanked by 2 of his most trusted men. Pete's eyes swept the scene, taking in the sheriff, the townsman, and the obvious tension. "Well," Pete called out, dismounting with predatory grace, "looks like we arrived just in time for the entertainment." Cross stepped onto the porch. "State your business." Name's Morrison. I'm hunting a man named Jeremiah Kane. Heard he might be in the area. Kane's hand moved to his gun. The cellar suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in. His greatest fear was materializing above his head. Haven't seen hide nor hair of Kane, Cross said. What's your interest in him? Personal business, the kind that ends with blood. Pete's eyes found the baby in Eva's arms. Something shifted in his expression, a predatory interest that made Kane's skin crawl. Pretty baby, Pete said. Heard Kane had himself a daughter. Heard she's got a birthmark shaped like a heart on her left shoulder. Eva's face went pale. Hope stirred in her arms, as if sensing the new danger. Lot of babies in the world, Cross said. True, but not many with that particular marking. Mind if I take a look? Cross looked between Pete and Eva, his lawman's instincts warring with his desire to be rid of his immediate problems. Got no authority to show you anyone's baby. Don't need authority, just need cooperation. Pete stepped closer to Eva. His smile was sharp as a blade, promising violence barely held in check. Eva backed toward the door, but Cross blocked her path. Now, Pete said. Just want a quick look. Confirm this ain't the baby I'm hunting. Kane's world narrowed to this moment. His past and present collided in Eva's kitchen. The two most dangerous men in his life stood between him and the people he'd grown to love. The cellar door was 20 feet away. His gun was loaded. Hope was crying again, sensing the evil that had entered her sanctuary. Time stretched thin as wire. Kane made his choice. The cellar door exploded open. Kane emerged from the cellar with his hands visible, gun holstered. His eyes locked onto Pete Morrison's weathered face, reading the satisfaction there. Well, Pete drawled. If it ain't the family man himself. Eva stepped closer to Kane. Hope clutched against her chest. The baby's cries had stopped, as if she sensed the gravity of the moment unfolding around her. Pete, Kane said simply. You know this man? Sheriff Cross asked, his hand moving to his weapon. We got history, Pete replied. The kind that needs settling. Kane studied the room. Cross and his men blocked the front door. Pete's riders flanked the windows. Martha pressed herself against the wall, her face pale with terror. Eva stood between them all, holding the child who'd become the center of this storm. Let them go, Kane said. Your business is with me. True enough. But that baby there, she's part of our business too. Pete's eyes found the small bundle in Eva's arms. See, when you tried to leave our organization, you took something that didn't belong to you. Money from our last job. Figure that baby's your payment plan. The money's gone. I know. Spent it on your dead wife's medical bills. Real touching. But debts don't die with the debtor. Eva's grip tightened on Hope. She understood now. Kane's past hadn't just caught up with him. It was reaching for his daughter. Take me instead, Kane said. Oh, I'm taking you. But insurance is always wise. That baby grows up, she might come looking for Daddy's killers. Better to end the bloodline clean. The words hung in the air like poison. Eva's face went white. Martha gasped. Even Sheriff Cross looked uncomfortable with the direction this conversation was heading. You harm that child, you'll answer to me, Cross said. Pete turned to study the sheriff. You protecting outlaws now, lawman? I'm protecting innocent babies. There's a difference. The room crackled with tension. Kane could see the calculations running through Pete's mind. The outlaw leader hadn't expected resistance from the local law. Seems to me, Eva said quietly, you got a lot of witnesses here for cold-blooded murder. Her voice cut through the tension. Pete's eyes narrowed as he considered her words. Too many people had seen his face, heard his threats. Killing a baby in front of the sheriff and half the town would bring federal marshals down on his head. Smart woman, Pete said. Smarter than her reputation suggests. What's that supposed to mean? Martha demanded. Pete smiled. Black Widow's got herself quite a story. 3 dead husbands, mysterious healing powers, and now harboring wanted criminals. Makes a man wonder what other secrets she might be keeping. Eva's jaw tightened. Her past was being weaponized against her, used to justify whatever Pete planned to do next. "I've helped people," Eva said. "That's not a crime." "Helping the wrong people can be," Pete gestured to Kane. "This man's killed more folks than cholera. You nursing his baby makes you complicit." "I'm nursing an innocent child who needed help." "Whose child?" Pete's question hung in the air. The silence stretched. Eva looked at Kane, then at Hope, sleeping in her arms. The baby had become hers in every way that mattered, but the legal reality was more complicated. "Mine," Eva said finally. Pete laughed. "Convenient. Woman with no husband suddenly has a baby. Same time a wanted man's child goes missing. Coincidence?" Sheriff Cross stepped forward. "You making accusations?" "I'm making observations. This woman's been harboring a fugitive. That baby's evidence of her crimes." The logic was twisted but effective. Pete was weaving a web that would trap Eva along with Kane, justifying whatever violence he planned to commit. "There's another way," Kane said. Everyone turned to look at him. He'd been silent through the verbal sparring, watching the dangers multiply around the people he'd grown to love. "I'll come with you willing. No fight, no resistance, but you leave them alone. Forever." Pete considered this. Generous offer, but I still got the problem of loose ends. "What kind of loose ends?" "The kind that testify at trials, the kind that identify bodies, the kind that remember faces." Eva understood. Pete wasn't just planning to kill Kane, he was planning to eliminate everyone who could connect him to the crime. "Then you got a bigger problem than you think," Martha said unexpectedly. Pete turned to her. "How's that, old woman?" "Half the town saw you ride in here making threats. You harm anyone in this room, you'll have more witnesses than you can silence." As if summoned by her words, voices echoed from outside. Footsteps approached the porch. The confrontation had drawn attention from the townspeople. "Eva?" a woman's voice called. "Everything all right in there?" More voices joined the first. Men and women Kane didn't recognize, drawn by the commotion and the presence of armed strangers. Pete's face darkened. His simple plan of violence and intimidation was becoming complicated by community involvement. "Seems like folks around here care about their neighbors," Eva said. She moved toward the window, still holding Hope. Outside, a small crowd had gathered. Mrs. Patterson stood with her husband. Other faces Kane recognized from glimpses through Eva's window over the past weeks. "Eva Thornfield," Mrs. Patterson called. "You need help in there?" Eva looked at the crowd, then at Pete and his men. The outlaw leader was outnumbered and exposed. His tactical advantage was evaporating. "I'm fine," Eva called back. "Just some visitors." But her tone suggested otherwise. The crowd didn't disperse. If anything, more people approached, drawn by curiosity and concern. "Popular woman," Pete observed. "More than you know," Martha said. "Eva's delivered half the babies in this town, healed the other half when they were sick. People here owe her." Kane watched the dynamics shift. Pete's plan required stealth and intimidation. Instead, he was facing a growing crowd of potential witnesses and defenders. "Time to go," one of Pete's men said quietly. Pete's eyes flicked between Kane and the window. His jaw worked as he calculated odds and consequences. "This ain't over," he said finally. "Yes, it is." Kane's voice carried finality. "You ride out now? You ride out clean. You stay. You fight the whole town. Your choice." Pete's hand hovered near his gun. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. Then he stepped back. "We'll be watching," he said. "Waiting for you to make a mistake. I'll try not to disappoint you." Pete and his men backed toward the door. The crowd outside parted to let them through, but didn't disperse. They watched the outlaws mount their horses with wary eyes. "This debt ain't forgotten," Pete called to Kane. Then they were gone, riding hard toward the horizon. But Kane knew they wouldn't go far. Pete wasn't the type to give up easily. Sheriff Cross holstered his weapon. "Well, that was interesting." "What happens now?" Eva asked. Cross looked at her, then at Kane. then at the baby in her arms. His duty was clear, but the situation had become more complicated than simple law enforcement. "Now we figure out how to keep you all alive," he said. The crowd outside began to disperse, but slowly. They'd seen armed men threaten their community. They wouldn't forget quickly. "They'll be back," Kane said. "I know." Eva looked down at Hope, who was sleeping peacefully despite the chaos around her. "But we'll be ready." Martha stepped forward. "You won't be alone. This town owes you more than we can repay." Kane felt something shift in the room. The isolation that had defined his life was cracking. These people, this community, they were offering something he'd never had: protection, belonging, home. "I should leave," he said. "Draw them away from here." "No," Eva's voice was firm. "We're a family. Families stick together." Hope stirred in her arms, tiny fingers grasping at air. Kane reached out, let his daughter wrap her hand around his finger. The grip was surprisingly strong. "Besides," Eva continued, "someone needs to help me raise this child. Someone needs to teach her about her father's better angels." Kane looked around the room. At Ava, who'd risked everything to save his daughter. At Martha, who'd stood up to armed men to defend them. At Sheriff Cross, who'd chosen justice over easy law enforcement. "We'll make it work," he said finally. Outside, the sun was setting over Salvation Ridge. Inside, 3 people who'd found each other in the darkness were planning for a future that seemed impossible just hours before. Hope opened her eyes and looked up at Kane. For the first time since Sarah's death, he allowed himself to believe in tomorrow. The rocking chair creaked as Eva settled into it. Kane sat beside her, close enough to touch. Hope dozed between them, surrounded by the love that had saved her life and created their family. In the distance, dust clouds marked Pete's retreat. But closer, much closer, was the sound of a community that had chosen to protect its own. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you, it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.